Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, the Status Quo, Chapter 22, Text 11. Vinyasta Charanambojam Amsadeshe Garutmata Dristvake Vastitam Vaksha Shriyam Kostuba Kandaram. A golden streak on his chest, the famous Kostuba gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. Purport. The descriptions in verses 9 through 11 of the Lord and his transcendental eternal form are understood to be descriptions from the authoritative Vedic version. These descriptions are certainly not the imagination of Kardama Muni. The decorations of the Lord are beyond material conception, as admitted even by impersonalists like Shankaracharya. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has nothing to do with the material creation. The varieties of the transcendental Lord, his body, his form, his dress, his instruction, his words, are not manufactured by the material energy, but are all confirmed in the Vedic literature. By performance of yoga, Kardama Muni actually saw the Supreme Lord as he is. There is no point in seeing an imagined form of God after practicing yoga for 10,000 years. The perfection of yoga, therefore, does not terminate in voidness or impersonalism. On the contrary, the perfection of yoga is attained when one actually sees the personality of Godhead in his eternal form. The process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. The form of Krishna is described in the authoritative Vedic literature Brahma Samhita. His abode is made of Chintamani stone, and the Lord plays there as a cowherd boy and is served by many thousands of gopis. These descriptions are authoritative, and a Krishna-conscious person takes them directly, acts on them, preaches them, and practices devotional service as enjoined in the authoritative scriptures. Text 12. Jataharsho patan mordna, shito labda manorata, girbhistva vyagrana priti, svabhavatma kritanjali. When Kardama Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because of his transcendental desire being fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God, with folded hands, he satisfied the Lord with prayers. Purport. The realization of the personal form of the Lord is the highest perfectional stage of yoga. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where yoga practice is described, this realization of the personal form of the Lord is called the perfection of yoga. After practicing the sitting postures and other regulative principles of the system, one finally reaches the stage of samadhi, absorption in the Supreme. In the samadhi stage, one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his partial form as Paramatma, or as he is. Samadhi is described in authoritative yoga scriptures, such as the Patanjali Sutras, to be a transcendental pleasure. The yoga system described in the books of Patanjali is authoritative, and the modern so-called yogis who have manufactured their own ways, not consulting the authorities, are simply ludicrous. The Patanjali yoga system is called Ashtanga Yoga. Sometimes impersonalists pollute the Patanjali yoga system because they are monists. Patanjali describes that the soul is transcendently pleased when he meets the supersoul and sees him. If the existence of the supersoul in the individual is admitted, then the impersonalist theory of monism is nullified. Therefore, some impersonalists and void philosophers twist Patanjali's system in their own way and pollute the whole yoga process. According to Patanjali, when one becomes free of all material desires, he attains his real transcendental situation. And realization of that stage is called spiritual power. In the material activities, a person engages in the modes of material nature. The aspirations of such people are 1, to be religious, 2, to be economically enriched, 3, to be able to gratify the senses, and at last 4, to become one with the Supreme. According to the monists, when a yogi becomes one with the Supreme and loses his individual existence, he attains the highest stage called Kaivalya. But actually, the stage of realization of the personality of Godhead is Kaivalya. The oneness of understanding that the Supreme Lord is fully spiritual, and that in full spiritual realization, one can understand what he is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Kaivalya, or in the language of Patanjali, realization of spiritual power. His proposal is that when one is freed from material desires and fixed in spiritual realization of the self and the superself, that is called Chit Shakti. In full spiritual realization, there is a perception of spiritual happiness, and that happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita as the supreme happiness, which is beyond the material senses. Trance is described to be of 2 kinds, sampragyata and asampragyata, or mental speculation and self-realization. In samadhi, or asampragyata, one can realize by his spiritual senses the spiritual form of the Lord, that is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. According to Patanjali, when one is fixed in constant realization of the supreme form of the Lord, one has attained the perfectional stage as attained by Kardama Muni. Unless one attains this stage of perfection, beyond the perfection of the preliminaries of the yoga system, there is no ultimate realization. There are 8 perfections in the Ashtanga yoga system. One who has attained them can become lighter than the lightest, greater than the greatest, and he can achieve whatever he likes. But even achieving such material success in yoga is not the perfection or the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is described here. Kardama Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form. Devotional service begins with the relationship of the individual soul and the supersoul, or Krishna and Krishna's devotees. When one attains it, there is no question of falling down. If through the yoga system one wants to attain the stage of seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, but is attracted instead to attainment of some material power, then he is detoured from proceeding further. Material enjoyment is encouraged by bogus yogis, has nothing to do with the transcendental realization of spiritual happiness. Real devotees of bhakti yoga accept only the material necessities of life, absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulation, provided they can make progress in realization of the personality of Godhead. Text 13. Rishir uvacha justam batadyakila satvarase samsidhyam akshnos tabadarshanana yadarshanam janmabir idjasadbir asashate yogino rudha yoga. The great sage Kardama said, O Supreme Worshipful Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existences. Through many successive births and deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transcendental form. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described here as the reservoir of all goodness and all pleasure. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, there is no real pleasure. Therefore, when one's body, mind, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. Kardama Muni says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness, and by our experiencing you face to face, the perfection of sight has now been attained. These statements are the pure devotional situation. For a devotee, the perfection of the senses is to engage the service of the Lord, engage in the service of the Lord. The sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. The power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasad, is perfected. When all these senses engage in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. When one is freed from all designated conditional life and fully engages in the service of the Lord, one's service is called bhakti yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally in bhakti yoga is the perfection of sight. The exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kardama Muni. He gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life after life to see this form of the personality of Godhead. He was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. Text 14. Ye maya te hata metashastvat adara vindham bhava sintupotam upashyate kamala vayate sham rashisha kamaniraye pyesho. Your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane nescience. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, there are two kinds of devotees: those who desire material pleasures and those who desire nothing but service to the Lord. Material pleasures can be attained even by hogs and dogs, whose condition of life is hellish. The hog also eats, sleeps, and enjoys sex life to the full extent, and it is also very satisfied with such hellish enjoyment of material existence. Modern yogis advise that because one has senses, one must enjoy to the fullest extent like cats and dogs, yet one can go on and practice yoga. This is condemned here by Kardama Muni. He says that such material pleasures are available for cats and dogs in a hellish condition. The Lord is so kind that if so-called yogis are satisfied by hellish pleasures, he can give them facilities to attain all the material pleasures they desire, but they cannot attain the perfectional stage attained by Kardama Muni. Hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection, and therefore they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Such persons are described here as Hatha Medhasa, which means those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. Actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Text 15. Tata sachaham parivodukama samana shilam griha metadenum upyevan mulam asesha mulam durashaya kama dughan gripasya. Therefore, desiring to marry a girl of like disposition who may prove to be a veritable cow of plenty in my married life, to satisfy my lustful desire, I too have sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of everything. For you are like a desire tree. Purport. In spite of his condemning persons who approach the Lord for material advantages, Kardama Muni expressed his material inability and desire before the Lord by saying, although I know that nothing material should be asked from you, I nevertheless desire to marry a girl of like disposition. The phrase like disposition is very significant. Formerly, boys and girls of similar dispositions were married. The similar natures of the boy and girl were united in order to make them happy. Not more than 25 years ago, and perhaps it is still current, parents in India used to consult the horoscope of the boy and girl to see whether there would be a factual union in their psychological conditions. These considerations are very important. Nowadays, marriage takes place without such consultation, and therefore, soon after the marriage, there is divorce and separation. Formerly, husband and wife used to live together peacefully throughout their whole lives, but nowadays it is a very difficult task. Kardama Muni wanted to have a wife of like disposition because a wife is necessary to assist in spiritual and material advancement. It is said that a wife yields the fulfillment of all desires in religion, economic development, and sense gratification. If one has a nice wife, he is to be considered a most fortunate man. In astrology, a man is considered fortunate who has great wealth, very good sons, or a very good wife. Of these three, one who has a very good wife is considered the most fortunate. Before marrying, one should select a wife of like disposition and not be enamored by so-called beauty or other attractive features for sense gratification. In the Bhagavatam 12th Canto, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, marriage will be based on the consideration of sex life. As soon as there is deficiency in sex life, the question of divorce will arise. Kardama Muni could have asked this benediction from Uma, for it is recommended in the scriptures that if anyone wants a good wife, he should worship Uma. But he preferred to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead because it is recommended in the Bhagavatam that everyone, whether he is full of desires, has no desire, or desires liberation, should worship the Supreme Lord. Of these three classes of men, one tries to be happy by fulfillment of material desires, another wants to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme, and another, the perfect man, is a devotee. He does not want anything in return from the personality of Godhead. He only wants to render transcendental loving service. In any case, everyone should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he will fulfill everyone's desire. The advantage of worshiping the Supreme Person is that even if one has desires for material enjoyment, if he worships Krishna, he will gradually become a pure devotee and have no more material hankering. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 16 on Monday. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj ki jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda ki jai. Jai Navadvip Dham ki jai, Nrsimhapali Dham ki jai, Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju ki jai. Ganga Mayi, Yamuna Mayi ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham ki jai, Sham Kund Radha Kund ki jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi ki jai, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jai Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol, Jai Shrimati Uma Devi Dasi ki jai. Hare Krishna.